Hey everybody, it's Shub, back and ready to get back into the fray in Kaiserreich as we are back to Fortress Ireland once more on today's session. And hopefully we'll make a bit more progress than yesterday, as someone has actually managed to get started about the time that they had intended. Crazy, I know. Alright, give me one second. It looked like my audio went weird, so troubleshooting on the fly, which is always a good idea to do, so nope, that was just me seeing ghosts. Sorry about that. Black screen is not compelling content, I know, but sometimes you gotta endure a little bit to get to the good content. So, where were we last time? We were building up Fortress Ireland as we are trying to get to the point where we join the Reichspakt. So, the initial defensive plan is a division, a territorial army of 8 divisions that we're currently at 5 of. And we're gonna, manpower is currently becoming the crunch point, as we're working on building on another military factory, because what the goal is so that we have our regular infantry division, which is just basic 9 infantry, 18 width, add line artillery, and then support arty and support entrenching, to give us port defense forces that are fairly meaty and can at least hold their own. And then when we can actually do some doctrines, then I will be able to push into, I'm going to do grand battle plan in all likelihood. So gateway to the Atlantic, just so that I can do the gateway of the Atlantic minigame. And at the moment, the electoral minigame is ongoing, in which my plan is to support the Christian Democrats in my way. Alright, so get back underway. Right, there's my 6th division. Oh, and the other event that was occurring when I cut out previously was that the El Presidente for life, Michael Collins, had decided that he was not going to brook any resistance from his party over the fact that Ireland's kind of in a bad shape at the moment, and that therefore he was going to fire a shot across the bows to teach some discipline to his would-be ousters. In spite of all those who doubted him, Collins has seen off the threat to his leadership, managing to neuter the internal opposition and forcing senior party members, including Mulcahy, to publicly commit to supporting him in this election. Mulcahy's claims that he was chosen only as a unifying figurehead by other party members, and that he himself never doubted Collins' leadership came off as genuine, but regardless, the question of his replacement was settled for now at least. In spite of this, Collins will have little time to rest on his laurels. The sentiment that had convinced his colleagues to try to unseat him was even more fervent among the public, and knowing that Collins would still be leading Sinn Féin into the election would likely make the grievances of many irreconcilable. The reality was that the party stood a good chance of losing this election, regardless of who was in charge. Collins had faced tight spots before, however, during the war and in the constant struggle that was governance. He knew the work would have to be expected if he was to win this election, and he fancied himself a man capable of getting it done. The big fellow is back. The big fellow is back. And delicious, delicious political power. Okay, so the northern question. Naturally, in light of recent altercations originating in loyalist demands for Ulster's prioritization during the crisis, the topic of the Ulster privileges and the treatment of Northern Catholics has once again become a key item of debate during the election period. Sinn Féin, dependent on a confidence and supply arrangement with the UDP to achieve a majority in the parliament, have denied rumors of Catholics being fired in greater numbers and continue to defend the Ulster privileges as the only solution for creating peace on the Isle. The Christian Democrats have promised once more to abolish the Ulster privileges and to put an end to anti-Catholic discrimination, attempting to regain ground lost to the Nat Pops among Northern Catholics due to the hesitation of Cathal Brugha's government during the late 20s to repeal the privileges in the midst of the Great Depression. Asked for their opinions on ensuring long-term peace in Ulster, senior Christian Democrat MPs mooted a move towards a federal Ireland as a possible solution to the current situation. The Labour Party, reflecting a long-time position taken by the Irish Labour movement, has insisted that Catholic and Protestant workers have more in common with each other than their bosses, and must forego their sectarian differences to instead unite in opposition to class exploitation. However, Labour has pointed out that the status quo enshrined by the Ulster privileges is clearly failing to work, and that the discrimination against Catholic employees by Protestant employers must be brought to an end. So then we can either uphold the privileges, we can make them angry, or we can... Well, we are trying to make the Christian Democrats win, and that's going to be picking a fight with the North. Gateway to the Atlantic is done. Alright, so then... get some infrastructure, get some building slots. All right. The Mythal Europa question. A key question of debate raging throughout the build-up to the elections have been Ireland's continued membership of the Central European Economic Union, better known as Mythal Europa. Initially popular after Irish entry in 1930 saw the end of the Great Depression's effects, the return of economic crisis to the Emerald Isle in the form of Black Monday has caused many to begin rethinking their views. Sinn Féin has remained steadfast on the party's decision to join, pointing to the benefits of European trade for the Irish economy and warning that without it, the Irish economy would become a plaything of the British syndicalists, with all of the ominous consequences implied. The Christian Democrats have questioned the necessity of Irish membership of the bloc, courting the votes of NatPop sympathetic anti-Middle Europa campaigners who have scattered the streets of Irish cities with hordes of propaganda leaflets branded with an old slogan from the Easter Rising, neither king nor Kaiser. As Christian Democrat Party leader Eamon de Valera, one of the few commandants to survive the Rising, has argued the martyrs of 1916 did not die so that Irish businesses and goods could be outcompeted by German ones. Labour has remained cautious on the Middle Europa question, taking the opportunity to accuse Sinn Féin of caring foremost about German interests, and yet, at the same time, accusing Christian Democrats of recklessness. Should they be elected, they claim they will work within the framework of Middle Europa to put the economic interests of Irish workers first and unpeg the Irish punt from the German mark, in asserting Irish sovereignty without risking further destabilization. Excuse me. We must clearly regain. Picking this option a fourth time will cost us. No, we're good. Oops. Guess that wasn't to be, unfortunately. But what can you do? What can you do? Alright, so back there. Of course, German Empire, just to keep those numbers about even. Alright, then back to Grindstone. Meta Europa, Frontrunner. Oh, so you have to, okay, that's nationalist coup in Bolivia, extraction complete. So, and concentrate as we're still working on building up that industrial base. And now we've got the Bulgarian War. The powder keg erupts once more. Following the Berlin stock market's collapse, Serbia and its allies have seized upon the momentary lapse of the watchful eye of the Germanic giants in an attempt to capture the lands each believes is rightfully theirs. While to many across Europe this seems like pointless ethno-nationalist conflict, a significant portion of the Irish public have begun to develop a great sympathy for the Belgrade Pact's ambitions and have begun to call for Irish support in their struggle. To those across the nation sympathetic to the cause, they see the conflict as one familiar to the Irish, seeing it as Serbia's attempt to right the wrong of a partition of its people by a foreign imperialist power, and to ultimately unite their nation together under one banner regardless of religious or cultural differences foreign rule has brought to their lands. Compelling. It would be a mistake, however, to believe that this view is universal across Ireland, with a pro-Bulgarian viewpoint quickly proliferating across the nation for a multitude of reasons. Pro-German voices in the country would tend to support the Bulgarian cause, and others would point out that Bulgaria also begins its modern history through its own rebellion against imperialism. Yeah, the Ottoman revolt against the Turks is something that isn't talked about enough. And like those across the continent, there are many within the country who also view this conflict as a pointless effort that serves no purpose except to throw the Balkans into chaos. The radical nature of the Belgrade regimes has also pushed many towards supporting Sofia, viewing Romania's leadership as nothing more than organized psychopaths, and the Serbian regime as deluded idealists rather, sailing their nation into the cliffs of ruin. With such divided calls from the public as to Ireland's involvement in this conflict, the final decision on how to proceed is the government's to make. We must aid the Serbs, we must aid the Bulgarians, then no one to be slaughtered. Okay, so we are ultimately pro Kaiserreich, Reichspakt, and Bulgaria, if they win, join the Reichspakt. So I guess we're going to war in... So how many can I... send volunteers? I can send one division. Do I have the ability to outfit a division? Alright, so they're building up. Okay. Military. I do not really have the pieces to do anything in particular at the moment, so I'm just going to keep turtling. The religion question, because my reading is such awesome content. The Irish people are, as a whole, staunchly religious, with the Catholic Church holding a majority influence as a result of centuries of British oppression of the Catholic faith. As such, the issue of the separation of religion and state is a heated one. Sinn Féin under Collins' tenure has pushed for a policy of pluralism, promoting a somewhat secular philosophy designed not to alienate Ireland's Presbyterian and Church of Ireland population and other minorities. In line with the party's Germanic influence, Collins has used the example of the relationship between Catholics and Protestants in Germany as a model for the Irish nation to follow. Christian Democrats have long tried to stand out as the most Christian political party of the Irish Republic. A political position for the party has in recent times found itself with tough competition in the form of the radically right-wing Nat Pops. Nevertheless, the support of the majority of the Catholic clergy remains behind the SC, and the party's MPs have made a point in their speeches to denounce Collins and Sinn as anti-Catholic secularists who have betrayed Ireland's ancient faith by permitting influences such as contraception, dance halls, and divorce to corrupt the hearts and souls of the Irish people. The Labour Party, being particularly vulnerable in accusations of harboring anti-Christian politics in light of their centre-left alignment and socialist origins, has taken great measures to emphasize through speeches by their TDs and articles in their party newspapers the standard of the party's commitment to aspects of Catholic social teaching and opposition to the godless ideology of syndicalism. I can speaks real good. As Labour sees it, their belief in the establishment of a just social order are perfectly in keeping with the teachings of Jesus Christ and the papal encyclical of Rerum Novarum. The sacred faith of our isle mustn't be sullied by secularism. Okay, I don't need to counter Labour because I've just been killing it. Fails Ukrainian revolt, so the Reichspakt continues in the east. The British question. Oh my. In light of the decrease in German power in the wake of Black Monday, the question of Ireland's relations with its closest neighbor, the Union of Britain, has become a more pertinent matter in the run-up to the election. Sinn Féin having been denounced left, right, and center by the opposition as being unpatriotic as a result of their support of the Ulster privileges and continuing Irish membership of Middle Europa, have eagerly seized the opportunity to play the nationalist and Anglophobic card, calling for increased security and armament to safeguard Ireland from British invasion and infiltration. The Christian Democrats, in an unusual move, pushed for closer relations between the Irish Republic and the Union of Britain. In a speech that has provoked much controversy, Eamon de Valera argued that so long as the two nations could stick to tending their own gardens, they would find themselves natural allies as the islands of Ireland and Great Britain, in de Valera's view, would always possess a mutual self-interest in preserving each other's independence, for their own sovereignty would be placed in jeopardy if the others was to be threatened. The Labour Party has called for diplomacy with the Union of Britain, arguing from a trading standpoint that a lack of commerce with Ireland's closest neighbour is a hindrance to the Irish economy's growth, and that open trade would improve the business prospects of Irish traders who currently are forced to resort to selling to the Union under the table. Though an abnormal argument for Labour to make, it helps to deter accusations of harboring syndicalist sympathies, of which the party, due to their social democratic policies and trade union ties, remain deathly afraid. What to do with Commie Britain is a very good question. And it isn't an easy one. It isn't an easy one because, I hate to say it, Labour's right that not trading with your closest neighbor is not the brightest of moves. On the other hand, I think Sinn Féin has the better argument because better dead than red. And that the Christian Democrats are just deluding themselves in that they are taking a position to capitalize on perceived political advantage as opposed to a solid look at the framework in which the countries are operating, because, let's be frank, the Third International is into the business of exporting revolution. The Reds will never leave Ireland to tend its own garden, so the British are to be kept at arm's length and no closer. Yep, rising British influence is fine. All right. So then next. Development Bank. All right. I will be glad when this election is over. Counting the ballots. 1 year has come and gone since the dreadful events of Black Monday, and in spite of the Collins administration's best efforts, the calm which had reigned within the Irish Republic for 7 years prior to the crisis remains nowhere to be found. With growing numbers increasingly animated by fear and worry for the future of their country, families, and financial security, and the opposition feeling a sense of deep anger at the government policies perceived to be responsible for the economy's desperate state, the preceding 3 months have borne witness to one of the most bitter and antagonistic election campaigns since the monumental elections of 1918, as the parties of Ireland and their loyal followers wage no-holds-barred battles of propaganda upon each other. From dramatic posters to furious speeches to drunken insults hurled on street corners, accusations toward opponents of secret syndicalist or integralist sympathies, treason, and West Britanism have become commonplace rhetoric. We live in a modern society that is supposed to be above such things as stereotypes and easy jokes. But drunken insults in an Irish event is... I mean, come on. So easy, you have to point it out. You have to point it out that that's an odd choice. Or maybe the joke is that it's drunk even by Irish standards. That tracks. That tracks, and if so, that's oofta. That is bad. How can they even speak? Or is the slurring just nothing but insults? Huh. That's actually a good English joke. The insult was nothing but slurs. Because, you know, when you are drunk, you slur. And slur as in an insult. So, well done event for making me think about that far too much. Fortunately, these contests across the center of the island have remained primarily verbal, though those resident within the provinces of Munster and Ulster often do not enjoy the same luck, the former seeing several incidents of violent brawls between the right and left, and the latter becoming more of a powder keg than ever. As a turbulent election season finally draws to a close, fingers are crossed throughout the nation as the ballots are counted. After much apprehension, one candidate emerges as the victor, and the leader of the next government is the SC, sizing up the Kingmakers, the Christian Republic. All right. So, at least that election is now done. And having gotten that... He looks unhappy. Eamon de Valera looks happy. One of the reasons why I queued up the music at the start was because I was in the mood for some microwavable pizza, and I'm still enjoying that. So take a brief break, a couple of minutes, get yourselves a drink if you haven't got one. Make yourself a snack. I'm going to finish mine, and I will leave Mr. de Valera's portrait hovered over so that anyone can read just what his deal is. Oops. All right, time to get back to it. At one time, Eamon de Valera seemed poised to be the leading figure in Irish politics. The erstwhile mathematics teacher was one of the few surviving commanders of the Easter Rising, as due to his birth in New York to a Spanish father and Irish mother, his American citizenship stayed the executioner's hand at a time when the UK did not want to aggravate a potential ally during the Weltkrieg. On the eve of the War of Independence, he was the leader of Sinn Féin and was ready to lead them and Ireland in its struggle for freedom. Alas for de Valera, he was captured and imprisoned by the British in May of 1918, and despite many attempts to free him, he remained there for some years. During that period, the man who came to overshadow him would dominate the Irish political scene, Michael Collins. When de Valera finally was released after the war, he was returned to Ireland to find the power dynamics had changed radically and his influence was now much more diminished in light of having not had much of a role in the war, while Collins' stock had greatly increased. For many years he played a secondary role in Sinn Féin. However, his jealousy of Collins grew apparent. Ultimately, he would leave Sinn Féin with Cathal Brugha after it became clear Collins' vision of a secular progressive republic, let alone his growing influence within the party, conflicted with de Valera's own vision for Ireland. Now in charge of both his own party and Ireland itself, de Valera is expected to be a conservative and cautious leader. We'll see about that. We'll see about that. Okay, so we did that, so Air on the world stage, we can't, so we're gonna cancel that, and we'll see how screwed this playthrough is. The odds are potentially fair. Won't join Ben Sam. What the brouhaha? Oh, that's faction. Yes, Benelux faction. Okay, that's wait, Belgium actually didn't join the Reichspakt? Okay, I was tunnel visioning on Irish stuff apparently. Reclaiming the crown of public popularity after Sinn Féin after a year of financial instability and a successful electoral campaign, Christian Democrats have emerged in the strongest position of Ireland's political parties to head up the next administration, their candidate and leader, Eamon de Valera, having been voted president, and the party now holding the most seats in the parliament. Unfortunately for de Valera's long-awaited dream of taking back the national spotlight from Collins, his party's number of seats remains short of a parliamentary majority. Just like Sinn Féin before them, de Valera will be forced to entreat the support of other parties to form a government, an arrangement that would likely require compromising on their ideals in certain areas. Of the possible contenders for coalition partners, one party operates along a similar enough wavelength to ours in the parliament to be considered the main priority for negotiation: the National Development Party. A pact with the NatPops, though closer to SC's viewpoints economically and socially, remains an unacceptable prospect for most of SC owing to their extremism and paramilitary ties. However, in the same manner that Sinn Féin before SC was sunk in the people's eyes by the many concessions made to the Ulster Democratic Party, so too may SC's prospective allies, the NDP, possessing a more laissez-faire economic outlook and an Anglophilic streak, being mainly descended from the remnants of the Irish Parliamentary Party, are asking for terms beyond the boundaries of reason. Balancing the desires of his supporters with those of his coalition partners may prove vital should de Valera wish to avoid the political fate of his most bitter rival. Let's cross our fingers and hope things go well. Oh boy. Oh boy. This is probably going to require a couple of loadings, I suspect, because the terms are going to be, don't join the Reichspakt. Negotiations reach a hitch. As SC suspected beforehand, the Anglophile leanings of many of the National Development Party's notables have resulted in problems arising as they engaged in talks to form a government. The NDP's leader, Sean Lamass, although nowhere near as pro-British as his fellows, is a sternly pragmatic man who, unlike SC, spares little sympathy for the plight of Northern Catholics and regards the resuscitation of the Irish economy as the utmost priority, fearing that alienating loyalists, while the effects of Black Monday still continues to take their detrimental toll on the island, might derail any efforts by sparking instability. He has insisted that the Christian Democrats must agree to avoid the issue of the Ulster privileges as a condition for the formation of any coalition between SC and the NDP. De Valera and his party, on the other hand, are keenly aware that should the news of such an agreement be leaked in the currently heated political environment, the consequences could be disastrous. As a cunning negotiator and possessing a good personal and working relationship with Lamass, De Valera tried to haggle with Lamass on the matter, pledging to bring Ireland's financial situation under control first and resolve the issue of the privileges afterward, though some of Lamass's colleagues will remain less than pleased. Let's see if Dev can barter. No idea if that will actually work, but only one way to find out. Okay, stand up in America, and America's about to come apart at the seams. Though it took several lengthy days of arduous debate and negotiation, eventually Eamon de Valera, Sean Lamass, and various senior figures from both parties managed to work out an arrangement. The NDP would agree to form a coalition with the Christian Democrats and to support the reformation of the Ulster privileges under two conditions. Irish economic revitalization must be prioritized, and any proposed alterations to the privileges or measures to distance the Irish Republic from Middle Europa would not be implemented, without consulting and gaining the approval of the NDP first. De Valera, a conservative and politically savvy man by nature, knew as well as the NDP that, despite whatever he might imply during the election campaign, simply abolishing the Ulster privileges or leaving Middle Europa the next day would wreak havoc upon the country, and that a cautious approach to these delicate and tricky issues was necessary to ensure financial and political stability. As such, he has readily agreed to the terms. The announcement of the new administration has permeated its way through Irish society. The church and faithful voters are pleased to see the secular-leaning Sinn Féin kicked out in favor of a party based on Christian principles. Big farmers and some businessmen hold that the NDP will rein in SC's anti-Middle Europa tendencies, although other less established entrepreneurs perceive opportunities in a potential decrease in foreign competition on the Irish market. In Ulster, Catholics have greeted the results with optimism and Protestants with concern, but both remember Brugge's failure to change the state of affairs in the north, the anxiety of the former and the reassurance of the latter. Slow and steady wins the race. Oh, that's a lot of delicious, delicious political power. Going limited. And we're going early mode. Delicious, delicious manpower. Okay, so then... those are tied. Okay, so going with... Right, so we can join the Reichspakt, but we need the war to get weird. We need the war to get weird first. The world to get way weirder first. Okay, we can do that. Right, yes, and that's going to be like that. And sure. Red Norway. Oh no. Disruption in the army. The election of a new government has not had a large impact on the makeup of the army, despite the many high-ranking roles held by former Prime Minister Mulcahy. Regardless of the specific priorities of the new government, the fact that Ireland is next door to the syndicalist state has not changed, as the army reminds the new cabinet. One change, however, has been lost to General Daniel Hogan. Hogan was known as particularly hot-headed, frequently clashing with his superiors, and only kept in place by a tacit approval by the previous government. The recent election has seemed to be the last straw for him, and also to the tolerance of the army command for his behavior, and as such he has been promptly dismissed from his post to seek his fortune elsewhere. We'll do just fine without him. Probably. Hopefully. Right. Work on building those two divisions to bring up support forces to full strength. The urgent matter of the economy. With success in the recent election, the government has received a clear mandate from the Irish people that only the current SC-NDP coalition can guide the nation through the economic crisis. It is therefore vital that the aftershocks of Black Monday are dealt with within a reasonable time frame, lest the Irish people begin to lose faith in our ability to deal with it. The mission. Oh, plenty of time. Plenty of time. So I'll let that finish, and then... Oh, goody. Ulster at the crossroads. While Black Monday made the 1937 general election a bitter affair throughout the country, in no area was this more true than Ulster, where the age-old antagonisms brought once again to the fore by the collapse of the post-British Revolution status quo have been clearly reflected in electoral results across the province. So the Christian Democrats managed to win County Down. The Nat Pops have otherwise swept the board in predominantly Catholic districts, a decisive statement reflecting the growing unwillingness of Catholics to accept the discrimination against them and a protest against the other parties, which they perceive to have abandoned their own flesh and blood, which commentators have begun to compare to Sinn Féin's famously overwhelming victory in 1918. Ruh-roh. The Protestant districts too have seen shifts, as several seats have changed hands to new challengers to the UDP's left and right, the Northern Ireland Labour Party and the Ulster Protestant League, respectively. Harry Midgley's NILP, though officially non-sectarian, have become a party primarily of the Protestant working class, and there exist whispers of support for the Union of Northern Ireland with the Union of Britain, with rhetoric playing on resentment that the upper class in 1926 chose money over Ulster. The UPL, led by former UUP politician James Hanna McCormick, is stridently anti-Catholic and also regard the UDP as traitors, calling for a policy of abstentionism towards the Parliament. With these changes, the UDP's position as the big tent representative of the Protestant community is no longer as certain as it once was. The status quo is dead and gone. It's with O'Leary in the grave. Loyalist anger will increase, reducing our political power, and nationalist discontent will also rise. Okay, so how bad is the damage of that? Oof, we are... That's hurting. That is hurting. The issue of the economy. The election was hard fought, and De Valera and Lamas both intend to prove themselves to the electorate as soon as possible. In their view, the previous government's focus on prioritizing larger industries was a mistake, and the route out of the mess it caused is to closely work with Irish-owned small businesses. Only by prioritizing homegrown initiatives, both leaders agree, can Ireland's true potential be revealed. Through the emphasis, though the emphases the men hold may be different, the pair of them believe that it is important to work on recovering from Black Monday as soon as possible. As the old proverb goes, something in Gaelic. Achilles' mission, rebuilding the economy. 479 days. The government will be overthrown. Okay, no pressure at all. No pressure at all. Okay. So then the 1941 elections. No. Gateway to the Atlantic, 37 elections, right. Alright, the government will attempt to review. Subsidize the small manufacturers. While Collins and Company may have been allies of big industry, they have left smaller producers outside the cities by the wayside. If we let these smaller plants fall behind, then the areas themselves will fall behind, fueling the worrying rapid urban migration and slum growth. That's a weird place. That sentence just is lacking something. I'm not quite sure what I don't like about it, but there's definitely something I don't like about that. I think it's because there's in the areas themselves will fall behind, fueling the worrying rapid urban migration and slum growth. That should be a comma, not a period. And the article "the" is also weirdly out of place. It's unnecessary. At any rate, grammar Nazi mode off. It is therefore in the national interest to support these smaller producers, even if they may not be profitable in the short or even long term. Okay. That. And there's the Second American Civil War. All right, the destiny of the world is at stake. Yada. In the weeks following the NatPop's stunning success at the polls within Ulster, a stirring in the consciousness has begun to be noted among the Northern Catholic population, with comparisons to the watershed moment that was Sinn-Féin's landslide victory in 1918 being frequently mentioned. For too long have they been the bastard children of the Republic, disregarded by their fellow countrymen and expected to be a sacrificial lamb offered up on the altar of appeasing loyalists, they proclaim, and at last many Catholics have decided that enough is enough. Though De Valera promised during his electoral campaign to reform the Ulster privileges, his words are viewed with distrust by much of the Catholic community in light of his major role in Brugge's administration, and his party's choices of coalition partners, the NDP, are trusted even less. Taking matters into their own hands, prominent Ulster Catholics, in addition to some sympathetic Protestants and Southerners from all walks of life, including politicians across the political spectrum, came together in Belfast to announce the formation of a new organization, the National League for Civic Liberties, under the chairmanship of Cahir Healy, an independent MP and one of the most prominent Ulster Catholic leaders since the War of Independence. As Healy has informed interviewing reporters attending the conference, the NLCL professed to be a cross-party and cross-community group which seek to apply pressure on Dublin to finally address the rampant anti-Catholic discrimination in the North, particularly in the areas of employment and housing. The government in turn has yet to respond to these developments, and although the desire for action is right now, remains to be seen how effective this nascent movement will ultimately prove itself to be. Who will look out for us but us? Who watches the watchmen? The growing unrest brought on by instability and domestic info. Wonderful. And the Second American Civil War. Europe was once the hotspot of Irish emigration, but its prospects for the Irish lessened on the continent in the 19th century as the British, in their post-Napoleonic dominance, applied pressure on European powers to disband their Irish brigades. The United States of America, a republic founded in rebellion against the empire, emerged as a new hotspot for Irish immigrants. Although they faced many issues integrating at first, they soon became a core part of American society, and the Irish struggle would owe much to the efforts of Irish Americans. A key turning point for this acceptance into the American nation was the American Civil War, where droves of Irishmen, including famed Irish revolutionaries, fought for the Union and, to a much lesser extent, the Confederacy. For the second time in less than 75 years, no matter their colors, in each American trench, Ireland's sons could be found. One side's Walsh guns, down another's Kelly. It truly is a brother's war. Where America once promised the Irish an end to their troubles, our people now feel compelled to offer Americans the same. With or without the support of the government, the Irish people will surely come to America's aid. To stop them would be a fool's errand. The syndicalist and elements of the PLP naturally favor their ideological brethren fighting in the combined syndicates, while the Democratic parties are lining up behind the breakaway Pacific states as guardians of democracy, though Sinn Féin is divided on the issue. The hardliners within Sinn Féin, along with the mainstream of the Nat-Pops on the other hand, endorse MacArthur's Federalists as the only force capable of stabilizing America against their extremist foes, while the Nat-Pops radicals sympathize with the radical aims of Huey Long and his followers. Needless to say, if Ireland should choose to involve ourselves in the American conflict informally, it shall have no shortage of volunteers. A safe haven no more. We're not. I wonder if there is a way to get directly involved, but okay, so MacArthur's got issues. MacArthur's got lots of issues. Because he's tried to hold it all, so he is, as the term goes, le bon. Very le bon. Alright, sport weapons. Done Rigby. Okay. Gonna get first doctrine soon, which is great. Confronting the rallying to the call. Confounding the expectations of those who expected the National League for Civil Liberties Foundation to come to nothing, it soon became apparent that the organization enjoyed a frenzy of popularity from the disgruntled Catholics of Ulster, as plenty were quick to flock to the movement's banners. Though an initial march in Ulster against anti-Catholic discrimination within the province by the NLCL was a peaceful affair, the Gardaí maintaining order by preventing members from marching into loyalist areas or loyalists from attacking the protest, its low-key nature meant it attracted little attention for the press or politicians, defeating the protest's main aim. Dialing up their tactics as a result, the NLCL recently organized a large parade and leafleting drive in Dublin under the banner Irish Rights for Irish Citizens, gaining approval from locals, even those who were otherwise in support of political parties supportive of the Ulster privileges, and achieving its goal in bringing the question of Catholic rights to the eyes of the newspapers and the Parliament. Ulster loyalist MPs have hit back at the protesters' allegations, decrying the NLCL as a blue shirt stalking horse. James Hanna McCormick, seizing the opportunity to present his Ulster Protestant League as a radical alternative to the UDP, declared the marches an existential threat whose ultimate purpose was the imposition of Portuguese despotism upon the people of Ulster, and encouraged loyalist counter-protests. The protests have proven troublesome for Eamon de Valera and his party's coalition with the National Development Party, having promised the latter that any measures related to Ulster would be addressed only after Ireland's economic issues had been resolved. With mounting pressure from the voters and backbenchers inside his party, de Valera may find himself forced to make a choice whether to alienate his followers or alienate his coalition partner. Haven't we enough on our plate? Again, not wrong. Not wrong. So that will add British influence. Okay. Political instability. Okay, so political instability, the gateway. Rising German influence, fall of Madrid, Independence Day, the Rising. You remember the Rising, and seek guarantee from various Americans. Okay. Casement's body. There was surprising consternation at this week's cabinet meeting when the Minister for Foreign Affairs notified the government of a most unusual offer from the Union of Britain, that they returned to us the corpse of Sir Roger Casement, the Anglo-Irish anti-imperialist campaigner and hero of the independence era. Against his wishes, Casement was buried in an English prison following his execution in 1916 for treason, after he ran guns from Germany to Ireland for the Easter Rising. An immediate and rowdy debate ensued among the cabinet about whether this was some kind of ploy by the British or a genuine attempt at soothing relations. The British, for their part, have presented this as an olive branch that will coincide with the 21st anniversary of the Easter Rising. While the opportunity to give Casement a proper burial is extremely appealing, some members of the cabinet have noted that this deal would require at least some kind of glad handing of the Union of Britain, if not an outright public acknowledgement of them as a fellow republic. It would be difficult for the government to publicly sing the Union of Britain's praises in return for Casement, but on the other hand, refusing the offer might be tantamount to political suicide, as the opposition and public would never claim to understand. How are we? I'm gonna let this tick out. Oh, it's at the end of the contest. Okay, so let's put British influence and bring him home and give him a proper burial. Expand rural work schemes. Let's get this back under control, as everything is kind of exploding now as normal. This is again another one of those that they always go war with Hungary. The Bulgarians are just Bulgarians are doing what they need to do. As antagonism heats up between the Reichspakt and the syndicalist powers, Ireland has found itself on the front line in the battle for influence among the two great naval forces of Europe. With the sleepy status quo of previous years broken, the desire to update certain facets of Irish life to maintain standards has begun to be embraced by cosmopolitans and nationalists alike, the former seeking to tie Ireland closer to its European partners, and the latter favoring the abolition of archaic leftovers inherited from the legacy of British rule. Reflecting the growing popularity of such modernizing proposals, it has been suggested that Ireland should transition from the old British system of left-hand drive to the continental system of right-hand drive, bringing the nation's rules of the road into line with the other nations of Europe and the Americas. Supporters have emphasized the long-term benefits such a switch may have on foreign tourism and on importing and exporting vehicles internationally, though opponents have fired back, decrying the proposals as very likely to lead to havoc on Irish roads and a frivolous waste of valuable time and resources better spent tackling the remaining effects of Black Monday. We are a colony no more. That gets them back to being tied. Good. Join the Reichspakt, we have avoided being... Yep, so keep them nice and... The Dutch do love their elections. They really do. Okay. Okay, so I can finally, I'm finally producing. All right, good. So now from Germany we import a whole steel. We can import some steel, get that fixed, and we can. Okay, now this is going to be a bit of a change from prior games. I normally go, I mean, pound for pound, superior firepower is what my preferred doctrine is. It just provides a well-rounded everything, which is nice. It gives you a little bit of everything that you need to do well. When I have the oil, I go mobile warfare, but because we are tanking, the purpose of Fortress Eire is we are Fortress Ireland, is that we are sitting on our butts waiting for the Union of Britain to come attempt to amphib us. So we are going to go grand battle plan for that wonderful +10 entrenchment, which is just chef's kiss. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Middle Europa vote and pending for industrial projects. I approve. I approve. Factories are good. Mary Lavelle. The Irish novelist and playwright Kate O'Brien was already an author of some note in the public's mind in years past, but her latest work, Mary Lavelle, must surely be now her most notorious. O'Brien found her niche in typically writing romances about British and Anglo-Irish bourgeoisie characters trying to find their place in the world following the British and Irish Revolution. Despite her fascination with the upper class, the committed Anglophile O'Brien has spent much of the last decade in the Union of Britain, where she relished the revolutionary atmosphere. Her lifestyle over there is much remarked upon in Ireland, as it's reported she crops her hair short, is known to wear men's clothing, and there are even rumors that she is intimate with other women. Her new book does little to dispel that innuendo, as Mary Lavelle features an older Irish lesbian professing her love for the female protagonist. This salaciousness is on top of the main thread of the story, featuring the protagonist falling in love with a married man. Between the scandalous nature of both the author and the work itself, there are calls in some quarters for the book to be banned in the country, while others say the comparatively more laissez-faire social attitude of Sign Fine should stand. There's a little something called morals in this country. Axe that tripe. We are the last bastion against the syndicalists. Hopefully. Maybe. God help us if it comes to that. Alright, so then... they both have the same number of points, so... a lot of influence points for just construction speed. Hit finish. Okay, so then we're gonna build some infrastructure and then build more mills, because we have the ability to use PP to get other stuff. So this should the Venetian Revolt, formation of Moscow Accord. Alright, so we've got the ability to deploy some units, so now the territorial army is now up to full strength, so that's a good day for us. Where crisis resolves and the Swiss have gone. Crud. Crud. Here. I'm just seeing if there's something I should be working towards for. There's just I need to. Grand Battle Plan has its merits. With a continued demand among sections of the public to re-examine practices passed down from Ireland's history of British governance, the previous motion to alter the state's roads to be in accordance with the bulk of the continent's traffic systems appears not the last suggested reform, as a considerably more radical proposal has taken shape. It has been advocated by this strange reformist coalition of cosmopolitans and anti-syndicalists that the nation's clocks should be moved ahead an hour to match Germany's Central European time. Synchronizing the Irish Republic's time zone with Central Europe would, the reformers argue, lessen syndicalist influence that proved beneficial with regard to commerce with its Middle European partners, comprising the destination of the majority of Irish exports since the fall of the British Empire, aiding the country in resuming its vital export trade and mending the damage caused by the preceding year's financial crisis. Detractors, on the other hand, have derided the idea as an act of utter madness, warning of its effects on sunrise and sunset times and of the detrimental consequences it may have on Ireland's economic sovereignty by tying Irish national fortunes further to those of Germany, despite Black Monday having, in their view, dramatically unveiled the flaws of such a strategy. A dark morning is a heavy price to pay for a national future. Perhaps we should reform the teaching of geography instead. Both of those are pithy, but I am going to go with, given that I am an outcast in a time zone, I live in a outcast time zone, I'm going to support them doing that. So, what am I? Where am I building the thing? I'm building the thing in Munster. So, let's balance the scales. So that everybody's, that remains the goal. Everybody, the same amount of influence. Okay. Middle Europa, good. Factories are nice. Free factories are good. Indo-Chinese defeated. Okay, on the 12th day of July in the year 1690, the Catholic King James II of England was defeated by William of Orange at the Battle of the Boyne. For Irish Catholics, James's defeat brought about their subjugation under the harsh penal laws, but for Ulster Protestants, the victorious William was a savior who had delivered them from the specter of Catholic domination and solidified their legitimacy to settle in Ireland, having arrived from Britain only a few decades prior. The date became a key loyalist commemoration celebrated with marches by the Fraternal Orange Order and with bonfires the night before. Although the majority of loyalists had grudgingly accepted joining the hated Irish Republic as an alternative to syndicalism, the burning of Irish, British, and German flags atop those bonfires took off during the interwar period as an avenue to express passive resistance. Though the month was always a nervous affair due to the ever-present ethno-religious hostilities, the rise of the Nat Pops, the NLCL, and the UPL made the build-up of this year's 12th particularly tense, as June and early July were marked by an increase in reports of sectarian violence perpetrated by blue shirts and UPL supporters. These mounting tensions exploded on the 12th itself as a confrontation broke out while an Orange Order march passed through a Catholic area, escalating into a riot. Gardaí were ineffective at quelling the rioting, with allegations spreading of local Gardaí sitting with rioters from their own communities, and by the end of the day, several people were dead and many homes were destroyed. The Boyne is still felt even centuries later. Oh. And the Indo-Chinese are defeated. It's okay, we're doing pretty good. The Reichspak's doing all right. All right, invest in major industries. Promote exports abroad. The small size of our population and the relative poverty in many regions means that our producers cannot really sustain themselves on domestic markets alone. We have to therefore make an effort to promote the quality of Irish products abroad, though through advertising campaigns akin to those pioneered by Guinness. That's Alright, so working with business. That's a rather beautiful, beautiful addition to our pool. So I can add another. New aid. Yeah. I am just not seeing a ton of stuff up here that I. Okay, so solving the deficit is a good long-term thing that we can have. Okay, so then we're plenty ahead of time. Cancel that. We're gonna do a run down this way and get some good stuff before this particular chain of events ends. Fall of Baton Rouge. Yeah, we're fucked. We are so totally fucked. I mean, it's like hard to describe how fucked we are. Do again for the Gales what you have done for the Greeks. Such were the slogans that littered the pamphlets that have been distributed around Leinster House for the past number of weeks. The relatively successful hosting of the modern Olympic Games in Dublin last year has led a small but influential group of Irish sports enthusiasts to put pressure on the government to rehost the games. The Tea Games in their original form were played in the centuries preceding the Norman invasions of 1169 to 1171, and as far back as over a millennium before the birth of Christ, if legends are true. Tradition holds that they were first held to mark the funeral of the harvest deity of tea. See, that everything ends up crossing with DSP lore eventually, because tea died in DSP's life, and the harvest deity Tea also died in Irish mythology, who died of exhaustion after clearing the dense, expansive forests of County Meath to form the rich farmland for which it is known today. These games were declared a time of truce, with great tests of wit, skill, and strength on display, and a time for celebration and the arranging of marriages. Shortly before the onset of the British Revolution in 1924, the Sinn Féin administration of the day hosted a modern-day equivalent to great success. Held a few weeks after and largely modeled on the Olympic Games in Berlin, the Games brought together hundreds of people of Irish descent from all over the world, as well as some guest competitors invited to come and add to the spectacle. To the chagrin of those petitioning the government, however, these games did not become a regular fixture. Security concerns and the spending issues became too much for successive governments of the day to justify, particularly when the insular nature of the games would mean there would be little international interest to invest in increasing the security involved. Even the hosting of the Olympics themselves has been a tough call to make, and had only been accepted on the back of the international recognition it would bring, assumed to outweigh the initial costs. But with the world engulfed in further conflict, particularly in America, where so much of the diaspora lives, let alone an even larger sporting event being held locally in only in recent memory, there was little appetite in the government to pay heed to these petitions. It can wait a few more years. We'll see. Hopefully. Caring for know-how. And, lest I have been perhaps excessively cryptic, the reason why we are utterly and completely fucked is because if the Confederate States, the consolidated syndicates win, rather, then I have a problem. I have a massive problem. A titanic problem, in fact. Because that means they're going to eventually try to make their way to Britain and do some invasions of the naval variety. A gift gab. Because we're going to need to do some influence. We're going to need to do some influence. So, for the German Empire. That'll hopefully get me up there far enough that so that by the time this is done, I should have the necessary stuff to go forward with. Sustaining the Italian Civil War resumes. I'm having flashbacks. That Sardinia run, I really need to try that again, but that Sardinia run kind of borked itself because the AI was just so stupid. As the breaking of the post-independence era's lull continues to spur on a desire for change, an additional motion has been proposed with the objective of bringing Ireland more in line with the continent, this time around involving units of measure. As another consequence of having been formerly under the rule of the British Empire, the Irish Republic currently uses imperial units for its system of measurement. In contrast, many nations in continental Europe, most notably Germany, use the metric system, though calls for metrication have existed since Ireland achieved its freedom. Support for reform in this area has begun to gather further steam in keeping with other recent initiatives to follow European trends. In the eyes of cosmopolitans, this would serve to further modernize the nation, and from a nationalist viewpoint, it would further represent REELGEW, George. Real good. It would represent a further rejection of British influence. However, opponents of this latest proposition have pointed to the deep roots of imperial measurements have within the minds of the Irish people, being extensively used in every activities for much of the Irish public, such as pubs, horse racing, and on roads, among other things, and the difficulty of updating the country to the metric system, a process which could take numerous years. In the feelings of the proposals of opposition, the imperial system, although contrasting to the mainland, isn't broken and therefore is in no need of fixing. That is absolutely correct. That is 100% correct. Go freedom units. However, and this is also true, give the Europhiles an inch and they'll take a mile. However, yeah, as long as I can still order a pint. So we will metricify. Garibaldi's nightmare. Although Ireland has a long and complicated relationship with the papacy, when much of Europe forsook Rome's flock, Ireland remained true, building on links between the two countries since the 400s. Even beneath the boot or nigh felled by English bullets, the Irish wavered not. When Hugh O'Neill was forced to seek exile in Europe during the flight of the Earls, it was to Rome he journeyed, where he lived under the protection of the papacy until his death. And during the Risorgimento, more than 1,000 Irishmen would travel to defend the Pope's lands, performing with distinction against the forces of Victor Emmanuel II. Irish relations with Italian nationalism, on the other hand, have been historically more strained. Many Irish oppose the notion of Italian unity due to the Pope's opposition, and the Italians' dependence on British backing for their aims led to clashes between Irish nationalists and the likes of Mazzini, with Douglas Hyde once rhetorically asking, "What did Mazzini say?" while condemning the loss of the Irish language. Despite this, the Republican ideals of Young Italy would nonetheless serve as a source of inspiration for Young Ireland and the Fenians. And years later, during the War of Independence, some radical elements of Italian society would profess their sympathies for the Irish struggle and assist the IRA in obtaining arms. While much has changed since that time, the people still look to Italy with a certain fondness. With war looming over the peninsula, the Irish are coming. Though naturally the bulk of Irish public favors for the papacy and the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, holding reverence for the former as the nucleus of their faith and sympathy for the latter as an agricultural and formerly neglected region under the Piedmontese as Ireland was under the British. Some extremists on the far right have expressed their support for Milan, but others remain behind the Pope, while syndicalists expectedly hope for the Socialist Republic of Italy to emerge victorious. Avante Orlando! If we send volunteers, we get bonuses. I got a tricksy idea. Got a tricksy little idea. Are they able to make submarines? They are. None of these are even able to make submarines. A killer. A real killer. So what we'll do is we'll finish this run and then we might make... So we can make a lot of mine layers. We can make things really painful for everybody. So that's going to require us having the ability to build ships. Because I don't suppose we're lucky enough these guys are... Yeah, they have a torpedo too. Cruiser? Yeah, no. Nope. Unfortunate. Gift gab. Okay. Feeding the hegemon. Germany's influence continues to grow. Yada yada. Which means that after this particular one, then I need to start working on balancing the books. Radio free Scotland. Oh, Scotland. One of the largest technological developments of note in recent years has been the growth of radio. Although radio broadcasts have existed in Ireland since the mid-1920s, the range of the channels were limited and required relay stations to carry their signal from Dublin to Cork. However, the technology has developed rapidly and new, more powerful transmitters have emerged that can carry a signal over vast distances. Spurred on by success of long-range radio stations in the Low Countries, a group of exiled Scottish activists in Belfast have been raising funds for their own station, Radio Free Scotland, planning to purchase a transmitter with a range of roughly over 150 miles. The station would be able to reach both Glasgow and Edinburgh, as well as Liverpool in England. The group's stated aim was simple: to provide an alternative source of news and Scottish culture from the tightly controlled media in the Union of Britain. Although British radio already leaks into Ireland, the new station, which is plainly planning to be subversive, may well be seen as a provocation by the British. It is a free country. It's free enterprise in a free country. And I would I need this focus to end before I can really start. A spokesperson for the Union of Britain released an official statement today condemning the Irish government for indulging political agitators by tolerating the operation of Radio Free Scotland in Belfast. Decrying the station as nothing more than a vehicle to rile up Scottish citizens with misinformation about the delivery of socialism. How's that for a turn of phrase? The delivery of socialism. Yeah, the red-coated gentlemen are going to show up at your door and deliver socialism to you via truncheon. I mean, who talks about socialism in that way? Like it's a commodity. Yes, I guess that puts UPS in a whole new context, doesn't it? The brown-shirted gentleman is showing up to deliver you your package full of socialism. Oof. Oof, oof, oof. Decrying the station as nothing more than a vehicle to rile up socialism, the statement went on to claim a responsible government would not allow such a station to operate without oversight. The statement has already caused most of the press in Ireland to rally around the station, who seem to be relishing their notoriety. We won't. There's no need for tit-for-tat for British. This was a mistake. We won't be bullied. We will not be bullied on this. Respond with a statement of our own. Ireland supports Free Scotland. Ireland supports the Free Scotland. Venice has capitulated. Heeding the hegemon. Okay, now the remaining things. Contract with the Rheinmetall. That's not really worth it, and that requires one. Okay, so Teutonic tensions. In spite of the upheaval, Black Monday, Germany's financial and political influence within Ireland has only continued to grow. This has become a source of much displeasure from entrepreneurs of manufactured goods. Dublin and Berlin remain linked. Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Just give me a little bit. That's just chill, boys. Chill. That's all I'm asking. Okay, so theorists. Yep, and Sardinia is now getting into it. Next selection is sport arms industry is. Yes, please give me that free mill. Fall of Rome. Yeah. This is why I did not even think about sending volunteers. This is just. Several months after the beginning of the protests, the situation in Ulster has only deteriorated further. The collapse in trust of the Gardaí among members of both communities due to the ineffectiveness in quelling the July riots has resulted in paramilitaries being increasingly relied upon by locals as community defenders, with supporters of the UPL announcing the reformation of the Ulster Volunteer Force and marches by the NLCL seeing a growing blue shirt presence. The latter has led to internal conflicts in the NLCL as Chairman Care Healy's desire to be a peaceful protest has come into conflict with blue shirt hardliner Gerald's attempts to stir Catholic anger into confrontation with the loyalists. Efforts were made. Lyrics were not expected. Lyrics were not expected out of my catchy, but sorry about that. Several conflicts with Gerald's loyalists. Efforts were also made by the ICA to infiltrate the NLCL, but these have produced limited results owing to the organization's wariness of syndicalist infiltration, well aware of being tarred with the red brush for that would be fatal for the movement. As it became more apparent that the protest marches were set to continue and stood in the way of economic recovery, the NDP's opposition to immediate negotiation on the issue of Ulster has begun to waver, putting additional strain on the government. The Catholic hierarchy, too, has expressed an interest in its support for the protesters' demands, with pressure mounting but the NDP remaining committed to not provoking loyalist outrage. The coalition proposed a conference with the NLCL, the UDP, and Catholic, Anglican, and Presbyterian religious leaders in hopes of working out a compromise. Well, all participants agreed to meet, and despite arguing with delegates that if Ireland's religious denominations couldn't work together, the result would be no denominations under syndicalist rule. The negotiations ultimately devolved into sectarian tirades from UDP representatives and the Catholic Archbishop Joseph McRory, concluding in failure and becoming yet another setback for De Valera. The center cannot hold. I'm not getting any political power. I need to... How do I go about trying to solve this? Okay, so I am going to try to quickly blitz down the remainder of this tree. Buenos Aires has our support as they fight Stalin. Probably. Stalin is an option for Patagonia. And Jad has survived, has fallen. So computing machine. Right, engineers and line artillery. Okay. So now my divisions are going to hopefully improve in some quality. So the next step is going to be building a reserve corps. Even though that's some ways out. It has been several months now since Belfast Calling, spoken in a distinct Scottish accent, was first heard on the airwaves, and this has not been without consequences. Radio Free Scotland, even in its earliest stages, was a success, if not too much so. Armed with a modern, powerful long-range transmitter, Radio Free Scotland was able to live up to its promise to reach both Edinburgh and Glasgow from its station in County Down. Although they were aware of the need to thread a reasonable line, the station nonetheless became a vital lifeline for dissenters in Scotland. In its wake has been a noticeable stream of Scottish exiles secretly crossing the North Channel by boat, organized by Andrew Dewar Gibb in Scotland and his associate Arthur Donaldson, a department store manager in Dublin, both of the right-wing Scottish National Party and hostile to the Union of Britain. Their presence and their anti-syndicalist aims have been welcomed by those of Ulster Scots descent in the north of the country. Of the new arrivals, some are here simply to escape their lives in the Union of Britain, some are clearly here to actively organize against it, but there are undoubtedly also some infiltrators who have arrived on our shores with nefarious intent. While the idea of Ireland as a beacon of liberty and safe haven will play well domestically and internationally, this is a dangerous game, and the government must decide on how they wish to proceed. The point of independence was for freedom to shine. Yes. That degree, yep. The point of independence was for freedom to shine here, yes. Delicious, delicious manpower. The details. Radar. Radar is going to be surprisingly important, I suspect, for us. All right, so we are... Right, Middle Europe vote is up, and I am supporting the most... Yep, for arms industry. All right, so... How's it bad, Viz? Yep, the combined syndicates are going to be coming for us. Siege of... You know, I had been planning on... No, I planned on going Fortress Ireland. We are gonna go bloody well Fortress Ireland. If that means having to be assaulted from both sides of the Atlantic, so be it. During the Williamite War, Derry... Well, the Siege of Derry. During the Williamite War, Derry was one of the key towns favoring William of Orange. In December 1688, Jacobite troops marched on the town. However, owing to the bold actions of 13 apprentice boys, the gates of the city were locked, beginning its famous siege, which would be relieved by the Williamites half a year later. For Loyalists, these events, alongside the Battle of the Boyne, would become a major celebration over the course of the year. One of these customs, the burning of an effigy of the traitor Robert Lundy, has traditionally occurred in an area overlooking the Catholic Bogside neighborhood. This has led to much resentment being felt by its residents, who... Yes, another brawl, another brawl. But the thing is like, I want my hydroelectric dam. Okay, so I have an opportunity to do something. So 28 days, so I've got time to juggle a little bit. The memory of... Syndicalist 6... The past months have seen a dramatic rise in British influence on the island of Ireland, to the alarm of anti-syndicalists who warn of their godless ideology's spread. Not only has workers' agitation reached new heights, but the North especially has been destabilized. Not only are ordinary loyalists dissatisfied with the Irish state's inability to fight off syndicalism, but syndicalists associated with the NILT have been emboldened to recruit Protestant laborers to their cause of restoring Ulster to a socialist London's rule. Oh boy, so how... Philippines have capitulated in their war. As I am trying to speed run... Assyria declares its independence. That's... As a result of the grand collapse of the Northern Gardaí, what had initially appeared to be yet another case of sectarian rioting in Ulster has descended into a state approaching urban warfare as Catholic and Protestant rioters and paramilitary forces alike clash with each other, with communities being invaded, homes burned en masse, and increasing numbers of people injured or even killed in firefights. The Irish government, fearing the Southern Gardaí proving less than impartial if deployed to the north, finding itself under pressure from the Irish Republican army officers alarmed at the chaos unfolding in the province, has introduced martial law to deal with the disturbances. The army has, since its inception, been a predominantly pro-German force, owing to connections with the Heer forged not only through interwar military exercises, but also during the Easter Rising and the War of Independence. While many generals have become increasingly skeptical of the current administration's ability to maintain order, in regard with some distaste Ireland's present commitment to neutrality, the armed forces have, for now, according to the Irish Intelligence Service G2, remained loyal to the government, with neither German diplomats, influential, or syndicalist plotters threatening enough to affect the course of events. Okay, fine. What is another minigame? Another thing to keep track of. The Northern Crisis. All right, we're gonna make some trucks. Run 4 of those to keep a fleet developing, which not really a lot of use for, and I've utterly lost. The North has been utterly demobilized, so yeah, the Northern Crisis. Wow. Because I am trying to speed run right now because I have 78 days left. In order to do things. Greenest fields in Europe is not my... Alright, down with jazz. Lower-ranking members of the clergy of Ireland's least populated county are not usually a matter of interest to either the nation's media or politicians, but Father Peter Conifray from Leitrim is an exception. An arch-traditional nationalist, Conifray advocates for the population to support the Irish language and traditional Irish music over foreign influences. Views such as these are ten a penny, and indeed such well-trodden ground that the liberals of Ireland are used to reposting them. However, Conifray has found a somewhat bold new line of attack, denouncing jazz as borrowed from Central Africa by a gang of wealthy syndicalists in the USA to strike at Christian civilization throughout the world, and branding listeners as outright traitors to Ireland, with particular venom spit towards Anglo-Irish and German residents for their indulgence of the genre. Conifray's angst-ridden views that strike at all things foreign and metropolitan saw him able to amass reportedly several thousand supporters at a recent anti-jazz, jazz with a capital J, mind you, protest in South Leitrim. Letters of support from Eamon de Valera and Archbishop Joseph McCrory were read from a platform, and verbal attacks were made on politicians espousing cultural pluralist views. It would be difficult to imagine such galvanization a decade ago, but it's clear that recent economic and political events have added fuel to this fire. So the people understand we have our own culture and no need to supplant it with another. He should be aware that without foreign imports, we would never receive Christianity. When economic answers are not forthcoming, the masses will be distracted by chicanery. He should be aware that without foreign imports, we'd have never received Christianity. That's a good one. Okay. Iguan Revolt. Build to keep it close, and then that hydroelectric dam. Microwing a decision chain was not anticipated. This game never ceases to surprise when even the most simple of ideas ends up getting blown out of proportion because you make the small mistake of underestimating just how crazy your fellow players and lovers of this game are. Alright, behind the barricades, after a month of widespread violence across the province of Ulster, the implementation of martial laws soon got the worst of the rioting under control. However, as local rioters were pushed back by what was increasingly perceived by a hostile administration, and saw the need to protect their neighborhoods from their denominational enemies, Catholic and Protestant paramilitaries established no-go zones with barricades blocking off roads and armed men keeping watch for the army and opposing paramilitaries. From the shock caused by the preceding chaos, a reluctance to endorse a violent solution to the issue has set in, as they instead opted to open negotiations with the rebelling communities, with force only being resorted to if no other alternatives were to be found. With the Blue Shirts playing a prominent role in the establishment and protection of Catholic no-go zones, the Irish government put pressure on O'Duffy, who has long officially denied any connection to the organization in spite of the obvious evidence to the contrary, to condemn the incidents and order the Blue Shirts to lower their barricades. Though O'Duffy complied to avoid a ban on his party, his commands would fall on deaf ears as Nat Pop hardliner Gerald, basking in his newfound fame as one of the key leaders of the Catholic protesters, struck back at a roaring speech in Belfast, branding the old general a coward and announcing the formation of his own party. The Architects. Which would openly advocate for a monarchist, integralist Ireland. Worsening the already overwhelming situation with all eyes focused on the north, ICA agitators also began to take advantage of the military's distraction, stirring up protests among poor agricultural laborers in Ireland's west by exploiting rural grievances, which had been building since Black Monday. Although the fighting has ground to a halt for now, President De Valera remains under much stress. At least there's no more homes being burned. Yet. It's a key yet. Rising British influence is fine. How are we doing on Liffey hydroelectric scheme is finished. All right, good. Let's start bringing appeal to Northern conservatives. While many in the North do not look particularly favorably on our emphasis on Catholic teachings, there are many who have at least some agreement with our common sense politics and willingness to avoid moving in lockstep with the Germans. By elevating these less extreme voices, we can win some new allies in the northern part of the island. As I need to get that under control. Recovering lost ground. With the government pausing to catch its breath following the chaos in Ulster, the negotiations between ministers and the paramilitaries have not progressed quickly. In turn, officers of the Irish Republican Army have grown increasingly frustrated, and their open skepticism of both the civilian government and other political parties is becoming starkly apparent. In recent days, the army has been ratcheting up the pressure on the president to bring paramilitary occupied no-go zones back under state control. Of particular concern for the army is that both the Blue Shirts and the Ulster Volunteer Force have not only begun to cement their power in neighborhoods under their control, but they have increasingly begun to use these areas as headquarters for terror attacks. In response, an ultimatum from the generals has been issued. Either the government officially sanctions a move by the army to restore order immediately, or they will act without the government's consent. As the Irish government issued a final warning to the Blue Shirts and UBF to stand down or face arrest, De Valera emphasized in a speech to the Parliament the need for understanding between Ireland's denominations in the face of the syndicalist threat, and that paramilitaries who sought to provoke sectarian conflict would face justice. In preparation, the military deployed the vast majority of the troops northward, readying them for a potential recreation of guerrilla tactics from the War of Independence as they retook the rebelling streets and deeming the reassertion of authority in Ulster a higher priority than suppressing any possible syndicalist agitation in the south. Ultimately, the operation was a success as Irish forces broke down the barricades and reoccupied the streets under paramilitary control, though they faced some resistance from both loyalist and nationalist extremists. In the end, however, the extremists were either captured for internment in the Curragh or fled the area, Though reports of soldiers assisting or showing lenience on blue shirts have become a source of concern for De Valera's administration. We must end this destructive conflict and bring order to the provinces. Yes. Yes, we must. Well, this is gonna probably end badly. Yeah, 'cause none of these are permanent. Yeah, these are all... Yep, want to bring that British influence back within bound so that we stay independent. Because I am not playing a puppet because, oh my god, playing puppets sucks. Okay, another anniversary has come and gone with recent commemoration taking place the 20th year since the passing of John Redmond. It was a muted affair. For many, he is remembered as a man on the wrong side of history whose actions led to the death of thousands of young Irishmen. For others, a man whose main mistake came to define his entire political career. Redmond, during his own lifetime, however, was much more than that. As the leader of the Irish Parliamentary Party, he was the de facto leader of Irish nationalism at the beginning of the 19-teens. His goal of home rule was on the brink of being made a reality by Westminster, making a civil war in Ireland between the Ulster Volunteer Force and Irish Volunteers of the day seem inevitable. The outbreak of the Veldt put an end to both those certainties, with Redmond making the fateful decision to urge all able-bodied volunteers to enlist in the British war effort in an effort to ensure the enactment of home rule after what was sure to be another brief war. He was a man for whom home rule was the end goal and would have been content with an autonomous Ireland at the heart of the British Empire. This is what most others, even within his party, saw as just a step towards greater independence. His legacy is one that looked upon more favorably by those who would have had more personal ties with Britain and the few more moderate Republicans with Entente sympathies. In his native Wexford, where he had been interred, a modest and respectful ceremony took place at his family mausoleum, with attendees including several NDP politicians and party officials, as well as some Irish veterans of the Veldt. Those present were urged to reconsider his legacy and remember him for the times he lived in before the Republic could have become a reality. The message was, of course, meant for those not in attendance and, by and large, fell on deaf ears. He was a man of his time. So he was. So he was. Mines, and then field hospitals will be relevant, I suspect. We will add them as well to our divisions as Hunan has fallen. Okay. All right, come on, we're almost... Northern Crisis is almost over. Okay, resurgence of the economy. Huzzah! Through the steady leadership of Eamon de Valera, not only has Ireland's economy recovered from the effects of Black Monday, it is now beginning to soar forward into a new era. Businesses from the humble family grocers to some of the largest corporations in the nation have all benefited from this period of fiscal stabilization, and new economic opportunities have begun to flourish with each passing day. A step forward into a brighter future. Invigorated economy gets us some badly needed stability. Okay. National Revolution. Oh my, Red China. Red China under which of its many options have they gone with? Okay, so Wang Jingwei. But when they finish, it'll be interesting to see how they go, because so we got Red China on the rise, and we're going to have Red America again. And there's little Ireland all alone in the North Atlantic, because someone made some terrible decisions in getting into this. All right, a moment of respite. In the aftermath of the reclamation of the no-go areas, the Irish Republican Army was left to police the North, the 6-county region set to remain under occupation until tensions had died down and the Northern Gardaí had been reconstructed after its collapse on sectarian lines. While a military presence had been deemed essential to deal with the continued threat of radicals, its continuation became increasingly unpopular as the month dragged on. Outrage from loyalists accusing the armed forces of bias had not endeared the Protestants to their patrols, while pro-integralist blue shirts also denounced the army as traitors and attempted to stir up trouble between them and local Catholics. With the government fearing that prolonging the deployment of Irish soldiers could risk once more heating up the anger that they had already worked so hard to cool, the decision was taken to bring the period of martial law to an end. Among the military, the move was not well received by officers, many of whom were dissatisfied with the administration, and some feared a potential coup d'etat. Fortunately, in spite of some grumbling, no such event came to pass, with the Gardaí soon returning to the streets of Ulster, as the province seemed to have returned to some form of normality, at least by northern standards. Despite this apparent calm, everyone had taken the point from the crisis. The status quo was untenable, and the peace would not last without serious reform. Calls for adjustments to the Constitution of 1922 had existed since the North had been reincorporated into the nation, and in the eyes of reformers, the Ulster privileges... lost my train of thought there. The Ulster privileges problems were the result of the government awkwardly welding the reunified province onto the existing state. After so much upheaval, the cabinet had come to agree. Not only would the reforms to the situation of Catholics be necessary to unify the Irish people, but additionally a total rethink of how the Irish Republic was to be structured, taking the wishes of all sections of the country into account. Reform that we may preserve. The Irish government has withstood its crisis, and the country remains independent. Huzzah! And now we can join the Reichspakt. Now we can join the Reichspakt. Okay. Well. Drop a save, and join the Reichspakt. You went how many PP for that? And they have to accept. Okay. Together once more. A Christian compromise. In last year's election, the Christian Democrats were at pains to persuade the people they would govern better than Brugge's previous ill-fated administration, and as the discord in the north heated up, it appeared history would be repeated. However, the peace in the province gave them a moment to breathe a sigh of relief, though aware this respite was only possible due to infighting, with Catholics and Protestants alike divided between their moderates and extremists. Without serious reforms, the second flare-up was only a matter of time. Passing an anti-discrimination law to satisfy Healy's followers would be an easy accomplishment with the NDP now on board, but appeasing the loyalists would prove a harder task altogether. Hoping that the post-crisis environment might allow the two denominations to come to an understanding, De Valera and Lamasse made the decision to host another conference with the NLCL, the UDP, and Catholic and Protestant clergymen. While the talks were tense, an agreement was eventually arrived at that housing and public services in Ulster would be decided on a parish level, giving local communities more autonomy. Although fiercely criticized by secularists for the power it accorded to religious institutions, for most of the deal was met with celebration. Embodying the true spirit of Christian charity, De Valera had not only rectified Catholic conditions, but also managed to content Protestants. The SCNDP coalition is secure in its rule for the foreseeable future. Love your enemies, do good to them that hate you. Huzzah! We've passed the trials, which means now that we are to the point where we can finally start. And all this up here is now Gateway to the Atlantic is closed off, and we can. That just lets us send additional forces to the American Civil War. All right, so finish the economy tree, and then the Republic maintained, or something like that. Okay, so Ireland avoided. We can't do Middle Europa economic integration. I should have done. That's really good. But at the same time, like, a lot of my production would have then went to the Germans, so. Alright, I may have misplayed this, but no, Ireland is a stalwart, it is to be a stalwart member of the Reichspakt, but it is no one's lackey. No one's at all. Promote exports abroad. Protect Irish industry. All right. During the Kaiser Wilhelm Society, which is the equivalent of the IEDC, or no, ISAC. I'm sorry, ISAC, not IEDC. ISAC. So we'll get some research bonuses from there, and then greeting old friends. With the warm friendship between Ireland and Germany that had been nurtured since the Weltkrieg growing ever more with the entry of the country into the Reichspakt, it was celebrated as Easter approached once again to use the commemoration to celebrate the ties between the two nations. In the lead up to the Easter Rising, the German ship SS Libau, under the disguise of a Norwegian vessel known as the Aud, attempted to land weapons in Ireland, however, would ultimately be scuttled upon being cornered by the British in Tralee. Though a failure that would be dwarfed by more substantial armed shipments during the War of Independence, the fateful events of 1916 still hold a key place in the hearts of the Irish public. With German diplomatic and military representatives in attendance, the captain of the Libau on that day, Karl Spindler, along with the surviving members of his crew, were greeted by enthusiastic crowds. The captain stepped onto the podium in Dublin and made a speech expressing his pride in his role to fight for Irish freedom, and lauded the growing relations between the Irish Republic and his fatherland. After the ceremony, Spindler was awarded a medal of pure gold and his crewmates bronze medals for their heroic deed. While some voices continue to grumble about a loss of neutrality, the celebration seems to have achieved its purpose of bolstering pro-German feelings and uniting the Irish people with our gallant allies in the common struggle against the syndicalist tyranny. Gott mit uns, as we all stand united. Alright, so then support industrial projects. I will take factories. Factories are needed when you have basically none. Might even be able to start making planes, but that's a bad idea. Planes are a kind of a no-go. It's probably Need to start making some anti-air, I think. Okay, so I can buy an advisor. And I want to get somebody who will get me some political power. So Dylan will do that. Librarian. Traditional economist. People back. So I probably am going to want... Oh, Cosgrove is a good one, but probably then this guy and the corporate suit, probably. They build up some... Then I will get to build some radar, which will be interesting. Because they're going to come at us, and they're going to come at us hard. The Dutch Revolution. So the Batavian, that faction just collapsed, didn't it? Yes, that faction just collapsed. Because the Dutch are joining the International, which is unfortunate. The monarchist coalition in Poland was re-elected. We're lucky to have them. No matter the political... I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that. No matter the political or economic climate in the nation, people will rarely pass up an opportunity to celebrate their heritage, and Ireland is no exception to this. Throughout the country, many have made the journey to Solins in County Kildare to take part in the annual Wolf Tone commemoration at Bodenstown Graveyard that happened on Sunday. Being regarded as the father of Irish republicanism, it is no surprise to see a sea of Irish flags waved by the processioners, but the less informed observer may be surprised to see them waving side by side with the tricolor of France. There's one nation that Ireland has been able to continuously count on throughout history to come to its aid. It has been France. United initially by faith, the French sent soldiers to help Irish Catholics in their fight against William of Orange in an attempt to establish an independent Ireland, albeit one ruled by a British king. It was with the French Revolution that France's relationship with Ireland moved beyond faith, and so 140 years ago they would send brave men to fight alongside Wolfe Tone, irrespective of him being a Protestant rather than a Catholic. This event in the year 1798 became known as Ireland turned 1798 into the year of the French, and it has permanently defined Ireland's relationship with France to this day. This unbreakable bond between the two nations is why the processioners have chosen to wave the simple neutral tricolor of the French people, not any of the ideological defacements that have arisen over the past few decades. With the war between Paris and Berlin seeming more and more likely with each passing day, many within Ireland have begun to see this as an opportunity to repay the great debt owed to France by helping them liberate themselves from their oppression by their socialist regime. Perhaps soon France will have its own Year of the Irish to remember as fondly as we remember theirs. Nothing shall break the bonds of our tradition with the French, even though we joined the Reichspakt. Not exactly the greatest of decisions in that regard, but, Signal Company. All right. So then I need to get started building the striking core of the army, but I want to make sure the army is fully geared first. And there goes Barcelona, which means the Cindies are having a rough go of it. Yes, they are. Good. The Europa vote impending, so we are already set. So That'll be another mill. No, that'll be another civvy, but every little bit helps. Beijing has fallen, which... How are things going over in the Orient? The Sindhis remain thick. Inheritors of the Republic. Among the countries that make up Europe, Ireland stands out as one of the few whose nationhood is by and large married to republicanism. Before the English invasion, the island was, like most of the continent, a monarchical society, and all its early rebellions, too, were of a monarchist nature. While a republic was mooted for the time in 1627 as a compromise between rival contenders to the Irish throne, it would take until 1791 for the idea to truly rise to prominence as Theobald the Wolf Tone, inspired by the French Revolution, formed the Society of United Irishmen with the aim of establishing an Irish republic free from the British crown. Though supported by the French due to unfortunate circumstances, the uprisings of the United Irishmen in 1798 and 1803 would end in failure, but the revolutionaries' vision would resonate with the hearts of the Irish people, inspiring them for years to come. Through the darkness of the bleak 19th century, the young Irelanders and the Fenians would carry on the torch of republicanism handed down to them, rising in 1848 and 1867 respectively. Most significant of all, however, were the Irish Republican Brotherhood, a secret society which was key in originating the fateful Easter Rising, which ignited the spirit of Irish liberty once again. And although proposals for crowning a German prince were thrown around, ultimately the Republican aspirations passed from generation to generation would emerge triumphant as the Irish Republican Army fought its war for independence to drive out the British. Though having broken away from the party which once led the revolution on account of its loss of principle, Christian Democrat leader Eamon de Valera can claim the honor of being the last surviving commandant of the Easter Rising and the original president of the Republic, and his devotion to the Republican ideals he himself played a key role in helping to reinvigorate has not faded with the years, nor is his willingness to defend them with arms. All of that for 10 PP, which that's about right. All right, so that striking force needs to get laid down, and next round of artillery we get. Next round of artillery. Right, no longer benefiting from invigorated economy, unfortunately. The Republic maintained. Take the university grants. Delegates from Middle Europa join. All right, the Gaelic Athletic Association was founded during the so-called Gaelic Revival to protect and promote traditional Irish sports. In achieving that goal, the GAA succeeded remarkably. Whereas before the advent of the GAA, the Gaelic games of football, hurling, handball, and rounders were largely moribund, come Irish independence, GAA-affiliated clubs could be found in every Irish parish. Though its influence was more strongly felt in rural areas, come independence, football meant the Gaelic sort to nearly any Irishman. The GAA continues to organize and govern these sports both at home and abroad, and GAA clubs and events often draw massive crowds of spectators. Which is, well, so these... I would have read the first sentence about what the GAA is really all about. I would have many fewer questions about what they were doing. But that screw-up's on me. As so many in this game are. But, continuing on, unsurprisingly for an organization dedicated to cultural revivalism, in the political sphere, the GAA was and is strongly associated with Irish nationalism. Notably, the group counted prominent Fenians and home rulers among its founding members and patrons, and local GAA clubs were among its founding members and first patrons. And local GAA clubs were in a loop because I reread the same line twice. Early foci of recruitment for the Irish Republican Brotherhood. It was a massacre perpetrated by Crown forces on civilian spectators at a Gaelic football match in the GAA's flagship Croke Park Stadium, Bloody Sunday, that became a potent symbol of British tyranny during the War of Independence. The GAA was briefly granted authority over Irish sports, generally until the foundation of the National Athletic and Cycling Association, NACA. Well, that's a different NACA than I'm familiar with because, you know, it doesn't involve airfoils. In mid-1922, at the time, Ireland had recently signed the Anglo-Irish Treaty with the Kingdom of Great Britain, United Kingdom rather, and support for the GAA by the newly independent Ireland was understood to potentially undermine unity in sport. That bifurcation remained in place even after the end of British rule in the north, and it's continued through until the present, though the Gaelic Games and thus the GAA receive substantial patronage from the government in Dublin. In the interest of maintaining social harmony, the present government of the Republic seems certain to continue to uphold that state of affairs. In short, here's the Irish sport and some political power, which I will take. Come on, give me that research slot. Give me that research slot so I can research things I'm not going to use. As that is unfortunately where my problem is that because I don't have the industrial base, I can't really build much of a navy, and I can't really do air stuff. The 12th of July. Again. 1 year later, on the 12th of July, 1690, or the 1st of July in the Julian calendar during the Williamite War, the famed Battle of the Boyne was fought in Old Bridge, County Meath, which saw the armies of William of Orange emerge victorious over the forces of Catholic King James II. Although the conflict between the Jacobites and the Williamites in Ireland would continue a year afterwards, ending in the bloody Battle of Aughrim, the defeat at the Boyne would cause James to flee the island for France. He would never return, for which he was branded James the Shit by his Irish supporters, and for loyalists, this date became remembered their most significant victory, marking their deliverance from fear of Catholic domination, for a time their ascendance to absolute power in Ireland, and is commemorated yearly with bonfires and marches and celebration. As this year's anniversary rolled around, concerns that more violence was in the offing, as had happened exactly 1 year prior, quickly cropped up, potentially worse than before due to the hectic events of the Northern Crisis. Fortunately, however, owing to promises of constitutional reform along with the reformation of the Northern Gardaí and security measures put in place in spite of some small-scale violence, and the possibility of any large-scale rioting was averted despite the efforts of the Blue Shirts and the Ulster Volunteer Force to stir up conflict, rendering this year's 12th of July a relatively peaceful one. A calmer July than the last one, at least. Yeah. I think constitutional reform's got to be the next objective. Alright, I can hire someone, so... Military High Command. Ooh, entrenchment expert is nice, but the IRA has to mobilize for that. Okay, so the interim I'm going to grab Mr. Monthly Population. Alright, so then I can start building my new striking force. They don't have quite everything that they need, but it's pretty close. An Bunrek Nua, which I assume is a new constitution. After facing economic depression, international interference, and the collapse of policing in the north, Ireland has come out the other side, still a strong independent state and a more unified one at that. As the country begins to put itself back together, the people have agreed that if peace and prosperity is to be maintained, change is necessary. Politicians and the populace from across the spectrum have agreed to a brand new constitution created through cooperation and careful consideration. Is what the country needs to secure its future. The new constitution, or Bunrecht, will be co-drafted in Irish and English with assistance from the writer and teacher Michael and Ristiard of the Gallic League. Many articles of the current constitution will be carried over as they work well and are not contentious, but there are many sections that are subject to debate. Each party is vying for influence over what is included, and they have all made their positions on these issues very clear. As the time comes to finalize these articles, it must be decided what direction the country will take and how it will affect society going forward. Place the Ulster privileges and huzzah! Good. So anti-air. Blue Lotus is a Chinese event to be done eventually. The first question facing the drafters is how the Republic is composed and how its governance shall function. First option, supported by Sinn Féin, maintains a system similar to the current Ulster privileges, whereby the northeastern county councils maintain greater autonomy, the President's Council of State has guaranteed loyalist representation, and loyalists have a permanent presence in cabinet in the form of a new official role of Minister for Ulster Affairs. There is some apprehension with nationalists who wish to see change in the new constitution rather than a status quo. The UDP and NDP, however, are pushing even further, asking for full devolution for the northeastern 6 counties codified in the constitution. The northeastern 6 counties have the right to hold a devolved parliament with areas of competence as defined by law. This would effectively turn those counties into an autonomous region dominated by loyalists. There is fierce pushback from nationalists as they see this as akin to a return to partition, despite written assurances against open discrimination. On the other side, the Nat Pops, and interestingly the PLP, are pushing for a unitary republic ruled directly from Dublin. The sole and exclusive power of making laws for the state is hereby vested in the Parliament? Legislature, probably. No other legislative authority has power to make laws for the state. This, along with sections emphasizing the primacy of the Parliament in Dublin, would certainly go far in unifying the country, removing the autonomy exception for the councils in the north. The PLP wish to give more concessions to the loyalists, but as a compromise, both parties have agreed to maintain Brooke's position with a limited guarantee of representation in the Parliament. Novel approach favored by the Christian Democrats is to have each province hold its own regional assembly. Each of the 4 provinces shall have the right to hold a federal assembly with areas of competence as prescribed by law. This American-inspired approach is one that has not been considered before, but could allow each province to tackle regional problems more effectively, particularly tensions regarding local populations of nationalists and loyalists. We shall be a federation of provinces. Ow. That's plus 10% consumer goods is ow. But we'll make it work. It'll be fine. Federation of provinces. It'll be fine. Works for the Americans. It'll be fine. The death of all figures of Irish mythology, none is more well known than the famed champion of Ulster, Cúlainn. Born with the name Satanta, he gained his more famous moniker, meaning the Hound of Cúlainn. As a child, after killing in self-defense the guard dog of the smith Hulan, offering to take the dog's place out of obligation, trained in the art of combat in Scotland, he soon became Ulster's strongest warrior, most famously defending the kingdom against the armies of Queen Mid of Connacht in the mythological epic. A well-regarded bronze statue designed by Oliver Shepherd, a sculptor who competed in art competitions during the 1928 Olympics, depicts the hound's ultimate death in battle, having tied himself to a stone, according to some tales, with his own intestines, to die on his feet, leaving his foes unaware of his demise for 3 days until a raven perched upon his shoulder. Although a Protestant born in County Tyrone, Shepherd is nonetheless an Irish nationalist who, in his own words, stated that my politics are simple. I have always thought that this country should be a free country, and that his connection to the struggle for independence, having been a teacher of Willie Pierce, brother of the renowned Padraig Pierce. With the sculpture unsold in Shepherd's studio, despite the admiration of it, the government made the move to purchase it, but is at a divide as to where it should go. Some have considered moving the statue to the General Post Office in Dublin, the birthplace of the Easter Rising, as a way of symbolizing the courage of the Irish and reinvigorating patriotism as tensions mount in Europe. However, loyalists have also tried to claim the mythological hero as one of their own in the defense of Ulster. Of his defense of Ulster from the other provinces of Ireland, and while many are skeptical of this, it has been suggested that locating it in Belfast City could serve as a means of bridging sectarian divide by emphasizing the people's common provincial identity as Ulstermen. Okay. Send it to Ulster. Send it to Ulster. Boned. We're extra super boned. The form of the presidency is a hotly debated issue. The term length, the elections, and eligibility criteria have been settled, but what powers the president should have are in dispute. Currently, the president has broad executive powers defined by a patchwork system of acts, statutory instruments, and case law, with only a brief mention of the post in the current constitution. The place and power of the president must be clearly defined, lest the position edge closer towards authoritarianism. The first option, supported by Sinn Féin and the Nat Pops, is a presidential system similar to what informally exists already. The executive power of the state shall, subject to the provisions of the Constitution, be exercised by and on the authority of the president. This system, modeled after the United States, would give the president clear executive powers defined by this Constitution. The president would select and head the government and be the main leader of the country. The opposing system, supported by the Christian Democrats, the UDP, and Labour, is a parliamentary system whereby the executive powers of the state are exercised by the government selected by the parliament. The president shall, on nomination of the parliament, appoint the prime minister and the government. I believe that's what will appoint this guy right here. We'll appoint this guy. The system is quite similar to the old British system of government, whereby the prime minister selects their government from the members of parliament, and the head of state, if one exists, has very limited, mostly ceremonial powers, only operable on the advice of the government. Additionally, following the adoption of this constitution, a new president will be elected to be ceremonial head of state, and the current role of prime minister will be renamed that T word, literally meaning chieftain, to better demonstrate his new executive powers. An uncommon system proposed by members of the PLP and NDP is a mixed system whereby the president has some executive powers but selects the government from the parliament and shares executive power with a prime minister. The system has been tried before in Russia and Serbia and could work as a compromise between a parliamentary. Okay. No, a presidential system. This constitution is going to be modeled on the American system. The weight of all of the refugees of the diaspora returning home is being felt. So yeah, that's how we'll play it. Okay, that's how we'll play it. All right, so then draft the new constitution. The selection of the Dale. The next matter concerns the question of the Parliament and how it should be elected. While Ireland's electoral borders are based on historic internal divisions, the method by which representatives should be selected from these areas is contentious. First option, supported by Sinn Féin, Labour, and the PLP, is maintaining the current system of proportional representation. Members shall be elected on the system of proportional representation by means of the single transferable vote. The system has been in use since the first general election of an independent Ireland, and it returns a diverse and representative parliament. Electors rank their candidates in order of preference, and then by counting and redistributing votes, 3 to 5 MPs are returned per constituency, which in theory are acceptable to the greatest proportion of the population. The other option, supported by the Christian Democrats, the Nat Pops, the NDP, and in a rare instance of agreement with the conservative right, the UDP, is a plurality system. The members of the parliament shall be elected in single-member constituencies on the system of a plurality vote. This option offers strong majority governments, but is criticized for being unrepresentative of the electorate and leads to what is known as the spoiler effect. Nonetheless, the system allowed Sinn Féin to gain nearly every Irish seat in the 1918 general election and is hailed as being better for governmental stability. So, yep, plurality system, because that is first past the post. Yeah, these mini games, I suppose I'm used to the presentation of the new order, but I gotta admit, I do like them. I'm reminded of that old Dreams of Russia mod where there was a big constitution drafting minigame. Ireland, the land of saints and scholars, as the epithet implies, has a long-established religious tradition that impacts the life of every citizen, whether they are one of the faithful or not. For centuries, the church has been at the center of Irish society and therefore must be addressed in the new constitution. The first option, supported by the PLP and NDP, is as follows. Freedom of conscience and freedom of profession and practice of religion guaranteed to every citizen, yada yada yada. This would keep the state out of the affairs of the church and allow total freedom of religion, but as a deeply Christian country, not many people are particularly pleased with this. It would, however, be a begrudging compromise between the nationalists and the loyalists. Unsurprisingly, the Christian Democrats, along with the Nat Pops, are pushing for special recognition for the Catholic Church in the Constitution. The state recognizes the special position of the Holy Catholic, Apostolic, and Roman Catholic Church regarding the faith professed by the great majority of citizens. While this may accurately reflect the religious persuasion of the populace, it intentionally excludes various Protestant churches that are dominant in the North and would certainly cause some discomfort there. A solution to this is being pushed by the UDP with support in Labour and Sinn Féin with the addition of this following section. The state also recognizes the Church of Ireland, Presbyterian Church in Ireland, the Methodist Church in Ireland, the Religious Society of Friends in Ireland, as well as the Jewish congregations and other religious denominations existing in Ireland at the date of the coming into operation of this constitution. This would placate the Protestants in the North and also give recognition to the other notable congregations in Ireland. The Christian Democrats, and especially Nat Pops, may profess how this is not necessary, but ultimately the Christian Democrats will tolerate the addition if included. Recognize the other religions as well. Because this is Ireland. No matter how much the power of the diaspora, we ain't getting past Catholic Church on this one. Okay. All right, so then Munster, the official languages. The question of how the language of Ireland should be addressed is a mostly symbolic one with great consequences for the character of Ireland. No one wishes to see Irish decline further, so the question is mainly around the status of the English language. Unfortunately, no matter how much hardline nationalists may wish it, English will have to have some place in Irish society. The first option, strongly supported by the Christian Democrats and the Nat Pops, is giving Irish the position of a first official language while accepting English if it must be used. This would mean that Irish will always take precedent in law and allow every citizen to conduct official business in Irish. More importantly, it sends a strong message that Ireland is and always will be Irish, and that the Irish language will not be left to extinction. The second option, pushed by Sinn Féin, the UDP, and the NDP, adds a third article, as a third section of this article, recognizing the special position and history of the northeastern counties of Ulster. Provision has been made for the exclusive use of English as the official language of these counties. This would give the counties in the north an opt-out of using Irish for official business if they so choose. The Loyalists in particular are afraid of being forced to use Irish and wish to protect their heritage as much as the rest of Ireland. The third has broad support across Labour and proposes a single section. The Irish language and the English language are recognized as two co-equal official languages. This would give equal recognition to English and Irish. The practical effects are that both English and Irish texts of a law are on equal footing, and issues of interpretation will be done on a multilingual basis. The option does not have broad support and is only begrudgingly accepted by loyalists. Many see it as an admission that an Irish Ireland is dead. What's my what does our nationalist discontent look like? And I'll take the hit. Irish must always take precedence. Landed titles. All right. Though peerages in Ireland were uncommon, there are many citizens of the Republic that still hold these titles or are set to inherit them. Some loyalists and wealthy landowners are kicking up a fuss about their peerages and are worried that their titles are under threat, which is not an unfounded fear. A sizable portion of politicians wish to completely do away with the last vestiges of the British Empire and push the image that Ireland is a modern republic. Whatever the choice, only the most loyal of loyalists wishes to see a system whereby those with titles are granted special privileges and representation. The first option is simple, that there be no titles at all and no citizen can accept one. The Christian Democrats and PLP support this, but it would undoubtedly cause some upset among the peers. Second option, which is supported by the UDP and NDP, is to recognize the existing titles of citizens. The state shall recognize any established titles held by citizens. Another option is to ignore the titles granted under the British Crown and for the state to grant their own titles. A kick in the teeth to the loyalists, but one which the Nat Pops seem intent on pursuing. A compromise proposed by Sinn Féin and Labour is to include both of those articles and recognizing the existing titles and allowing for new ones to be created. Existing titles, and we shall grant. Existing titles are recognized, and we will grant our own non-hereditary ones. The Constitution is finalized. The process of drafting a Constitution has come to an end, and all that is left is to put it to a referendum, which is almost certain to pass given the desire for New Ireland. Now that many of the divisive elements in the politics of the nation have been settled, true reconstruction and reconciliation can begin. Towards a new economy. Get some war support, unlocks federalization once the federal has been established. Okay. Black gold. Today Leinster House has been brimming with the sounds of much backslapping and relief. Congratulations. With the fine work of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Ireland's access to a vital energy source had been secured. As this fuel was not naturally found in Ireland, it could only be obtained by importing from countries much closer to the equator, and so important was this resource that many wondered how so many industrial sectors had managed without it in the past, given how reliant they are now on the rich, dark liquid it produced. Tea. The only good thing the British ever left us with, as has been murmured about people's love of the beverage. Such is its popularity that per capita Ireland's demand now outstrips its neighbors. Introduced by the old British ruling class well over 100 years ago, its usage diffused among the rest of the population in time. Traditionally, the British had gained their supply of the leaf from their colonies on the Indian subcontinent, with the Union now obtaining similarly from their own Indian allies. While access to this source for ourselves seems steady for now, cautious whispers determined that it would be unwise to solely rely on it should the trade be disrupted in the future. As such, a small group of Irish diplomats had spent the last few months traveling the world, visiting plantations and negotiating importation deals, finally determining that mixing some Indian Assam tea with the darker, stronger tea available in German-held Kenya would produce an excellent, robust brew suitable for the domestic market. By decreasing the country's reliance on potentially unreliable, solely Indian sources and diversifying the blends used, the results have meant both a better tasting tea and a more secure access to imports for years to come. Milk and no sugar, thanks. Okay, that's gonna be what? That's almost 3 hours on the clock. That's a pretty good session. Okay, so we're kind of getting to the point of the fortress part of Fortress Ireland, which, yeah, crazy, I know. Crazy, I know that we're actually going to get into the fortress part of it. But, so, port. Gonna build level 3s on all the ports. Yeah, Galway, yeah. Is that a port? Military. That is not. That just looks that. Those are dockyards, right? Right. Those are dockyards. Shows you, that should tell you how often I actually build fortifications. I actually use a core element of the game. So then. No, because those aren't going to be defended. Yeah, the goal is build out the defenses on the coast, as that's going to be until October. Then the radars can be finished eventually, whenever, as it's most important to get the land forts built, so that we can hold the ports at all costs, and then we will have enough in the central striking force to just smash them when they appear. So, am I going to lose the Ulster privileges? Constitutionalism prevails. I am. Good. Good. Okay. In the name of the Republic. Alright, uniting the people. Then I will convene some legislatures and, well, Alright, I'm gonna wait until the October 9th, let the fortifications process actually begin. The French are building an atomic weapon, which is like not good. But we'll start building hurricanes. As you do. I've got like basically no way to sustain those, but okay. So then now that those are in production, I do have a fighter command. I will be able to do something, limited though it may be. All right. For the anniversary of the retirement of late historian and Senator Alice Stopford Green, a work has been published which examines an area of her interest, Irish nationalism among Protestants and the Anglo-Irish. Given her background, this subject matter came of no surprise. The book argues the irrefutability that since 1798, the Anglo-Irish have played a crucial role in the development of Irish nationalism and republicanism. Anglo-Irish and Protestants never made up more than 15% of the population, and while they would have been overwhelmingly loyalist historically, those who took up the nationalist cause made a disproportionate impact in nationalism as a whole. From the founders of Irish republicanism, Theobald Wolfe Tone and Lord Edward Fitzgerald, the movement's leadership has included Protestants, helped by the greater status and education that was afforded to them for centuries. Robert Emmet led his rebellion in 1803, and Charles Stewart Parnell was the de facto leader of nationalism in the 1880s. Outside politics, literary greats Oscar Wilde and W.B. Yeats are also known for their nationalist ideals. The involvement of Protestants in nationalism, it argues, was key in separating the Catholic identity from the Irish one in the late 1700s, a time when they were entwined. The book goes as far as contemporary Ireland, focusing on the fringes of politics such as socialist academic Benjamin Barrington or integralist proponent Ernst Blythe, and commenting on the British Revolution may have influenced the popularity of different political groups among this population. For reasonably dry academic text, the response has been fairly warm, with critics opining that the state's treatment of minorities should be used as a marker of its maturity. Though the Anglo-Irish experience is not quite the same as that of the Ulster Scots, the government is keen to try and promote the message of ecumenism to those in the north, even if it falls on deaf ears. Liberté, égalité, fraternité, and all that. Even if the forebears didn't see themselves as Irish, their descendants can. What do I need the most help with? What's my political power doing? Try to keep working on reducing that nationalist anger. In the name of the Republic. Okay, with In the Name of the Republic done. Which would be that, probably. Alright, I'm going to empower the councils and I think I'm going to call it there. Yep, with forts finally being built, about bloody time in the Fortress Ireland campaign, as we are on track to be ready for when the war breaks out. And the war is going to be, we've got a moderately sized international, but we've got a Reichspakt that has managed to maintain itself in the east. which is a positive development when you've decided to sign your own death warrant and join the Reichspakt. But the Reichspakt's success is countervailed by this over here. This is the opposite of good. Who are those boys? The Belgian boys. Because as Belgium joined the International, probably has that. I'm sorry, the Reichspakt. Has it come back to the Reichspakt? Yes, it has. Okay, so... Oh, and Hungary got fragmented. Good times. Good times. At least the Ottomans have held it together, and the Fourth Balkan War is still ongoing as Bulgaria is just having a day. Oh, but in Italy, good stuff's going on, so yeah, we've got the makings of something. We've got the makings of a fair fight. Not perhaps the best of fights, but a reasonably fair one. Okay. So, channel stuff as I work on getting out of here. I do have the fifth part rather, of the Tsarist playthrough. I do have it recorded. Part of the reason that drove me back to YouTube was when I was trying to record it out. Whenever it encountered a streaming issue on Twitch, and for some reason, whenever I was trying to output it at 1080p, even though I'm playing in 1440p, it would find the connection to be unstable, even at 6,000 kilobits. I don't know what its issue was, but the long story short, and why that's relevant to this particular story, is that I have part 5, but it's in 5 pieces. I need to just sit down and weld them all together, which I will do maybe this weekend. So it's coming. Part 5's coming, and it actually has some role playing, so it should be better than some of the interim fare, hopefully. Support for industrial projects, yeah, more cities are good. All right, Ireland is slowly coming together. It is slowly getting there. All right, so in the meantime, then, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out, both who showed up on the stream itself, and who may turn up on the VOD. And until next time, I wish everybody a wonderful, wonderful evening.